On today's ChurchTechCast.com screencast show, using ProPresenter for graphics and VTR modes. Hi, and welcome again to another episode of the ChurchTechCast.com screencast show. This is the show where every week I help you with the software that we use in the church. My name is Paul Allen Clifford. I'm your host, and I'd love for you to ask your question, so just do that below the video. If you're listening to an audio version of one of my shows, you can always head over to trinitydigitalmedia.com and leave your comment there as well. Of course, this one really doesn't have an audio version, but just FYI on the other shows. So I thought that I'd show you the way that we do ProPresenter at my church and see if it doesn't appeal to you, and I'll show you just kind of the pluses and minuses of it. So without further ado, let's head over to my computer and take a look. So here we are over in ProPresenter 6, and I haven't ever seen another church do it this way. It could be plenty of churches do, I just haven't seen it. So I thought that I would show you what we do at my church and see if that's helpful to you. So basically what we do is we have two machines, one that's dedicated to graphics, lyrics, that kind of thing, and one that's dedicated to VTR or video playback. Now, the advantage of this is some of the hardware that goes with the VTR machine I'm not the VTR machine, the graphics machine isn't necessary on the VTR machine. So we're saving a little bit of money. So that's the first thing. Also, since it's the SDI module, that on the graphics machine we have the SDI module and we have alpha channels out so that we can do transparency from this. So this lyric appears here. Of course, this is my laptop, so it's not really exactly what we've got at church, but it appears here to have a black background, but when the switcher receives it, it gets a transparent background right here, and you need special hardware and an additional module from ProPresenter to do that. So that one is dedicated to that, and then we have another machine that's dedicated to just playing back videos and stills and such. So you can do that like I have it here with just playing as a standalone foreground video or several videos in a single playlist like this has. This is actually a still. So you can do it either way. I actually kind of prefer this because I can use a go to next timer to the way the go to next timer works is if this was a foreground video, which I believe it's a background, yeah, it is. When you add the go to next timer, this duration is the time after the last frame of the video. So if this was a foreground video, at the end of 30 seconds, if I'd set it to 0, it would immediately go into the next slide. If it was set to 1, a second later it would go in. So generally you're going to want to set it to 0. But that gives me a little bit of flexibility that I can't do with this as a standalone foreground video. Now you might be wondering why we don't just put everything on one machine. Well, originally what we had was two operators, one that was responsible for lyrics, so that person would just go through lyrics, and then we had someone else that was responsible for video playback. So that was a two-person job. We've recently had some changes in our church where we're slimming down the amount of people required to do a weekend, and so this is actually one person that alternates between the two machines, but they're both right next to each other, so it's just a matter of turning your head and moving your hand to the other mouse and keyboard. So pretty straightforward, and typically you're only doing one or the other, but not both. So the advantage of doing this is you can split up the job between two people. When you do that, you only need, if you have a video switcher that takes an alpha channel, you only need the additional hardware and module on the graphics machine. On the VTR machine, it can be pretty much stock, and you'd be good to go that way. So there's a savings there. Also, some of the problems that you run into when you're doing something like I showed you previously, which was A Mighty Fortress Is Our God, where you're playing a video. I've figured out a way around this, but it's not the case that ProPresenter is designed necessarily to make it to where you play a video and then you can show lyrics on the confidence monitor and still have control of the video. You can temporarily disable that, but anyway, it's less than ideal. So that's another reason that I've done it this way, that we do it this way at my church. Disadvantages are that, again, it's really designed to be a two-person job. One person can do it, but there are a few times where you need to start a video. Normally you'd have the backgrounds over here, and they'd be this would be your background for a song or for all the songs in church. So you'd have this here. I need to kill the go to next timer on this. So this would be well, anyway, that would play in the background, and then on the other machine we would do this, and that gives us some additional controls. We can actually send this to the center screen, our large screen, with different information on it than different information behind than is behind the than what's behind the side screens. Side screens tend to be IMAG, center screen tends to be graphics of some nature. So we can use the same graphics in both places, but put different things behind them using different MEs on the switcher. All that to say that the advantage is you have all that flexibility. The disadvantage is it's really more of a two-person job when you're, as I was saying before, when you're starting a background over here and then immediately you've got to start lyrics over here. If that's two different machines, it's less of an issue, but it is still an issue sometimes that it's more of a two-person job. Well, I hope that helped you. I hope that now you can see just exactly the advantages and the disadvantages of separating out your graphics overlay from your video playback. And I hope that it helps you as you're deciding how to implement things. If you like this content, you'd probably like my email newsletter, so head on over to trinitydigitalmedia.com/gifts, GIFTS, and pick up your free church tech gift, including one of my free mini courses on ProPresenter. Also, if you'd like to support the show or you'd like some more in-depth training, head over to trinitydigitalmedia.com/store, and there you can find all my digital resources and the membership to Church Tech U, the community that gives you all of my resources for about 54 cents a day. Probably less than you spend on coffee, quite frankly. Until next time, this is Paul Allen Clifford with TrinityDigitalMedia.com. Go out and change eternity.